Check, check. See if we get a text that says it's fixed. It's working in the room, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda from Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Zorb. Any discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein?
Present.
Ms. Dukestein? Yes or no?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. You hadn't done that in a while. Ms. DeWald?
Yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, and it's not working.
Thank you.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. You have the minutes from the November 7th meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Anderson. Second by Ms. Underwood to adopt the minutes from the 11-7 meeting. Any discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein?
Yes.
Ms. DeWald?
Yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. We did have one item from communication, and it is the October Mayor's Court Report. That is included in the packet. I will take us to council committees, starting with City Community Development and Recreation.
Every single time. I'm so sorry. I always forget to pull up my minutes, and my computer's very dead. I'm very sorry. I can run through. Let me grab out my minutes. Man, I was on it. All right, perfect. All right, so thank you, Mr. President. First, we talked about our senior center property legislation, which is on the agenda for tonight. We discussed kind of what the next step would be if we did approve the purchase for this property, and the next steps if we didn't, and kind of looked into those possibilities and what it would mean for our senior citizens and what it would mean for our budget. And hopefully we had enough discussion to make a sound decision tonight or whenever we take a vote on that. We then talked about the student government, and they will be coming in April, I think, to the first meeting in April, if I'm not wrong. And we're looking into legislation for them to vote on. We had a short update from our recreation director on just how a few things are going for recreation. We then got an update from Ms. Zorb for the Tree City USA about renewing the membership, which is coming up, and possibly how they can participate in the tree lighting ceremony that's coming up. The update for the comprehensive plan and for the economic development were the same, just the surveys were sent out. And if you are at home, that survey's on Facebook. I think it's also on our website, if I'm not wrong. And I know we would all really appreciate if you guys filled that out. It will really help us get feedback on where the city's going and where you guys want it to go. We also, we didn't really talk about anything else. The senior center property legislation discussion took a while. So the rest of it is just kind of getting pushed until the next meeting. We ended our meeting at 7:31, and our next meeting is December. It is December 12th at 6:30. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Next up is Budget and Finance.
We had our meeting Monday, November the 14th. We began at 7:36, and we discussed fire. We talked about the budget, and each department chair came forward to present their budget. So fire, we had executive session, chief of police, public works, recreation, and finance. And then we discussed the resolution to accept the amount and rates, and then push that over to our meeting today. And then I was no longer there, so I don't know if we had any new or old business. So I'm going to let Mayor Jazor take it over from there.
Thank you, Ms. Orb.
We ended when you left. So there was nothing else to add, other than, I think we set up the next meetings. So the special meeting that we had last Wednesday, and then there is another special meeting on the 29th.
Thank you. Next meeting, next regular meeting is December 12th, 7:30, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, Rules and Public Policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have not met since our regular meeting in October, and I have yielded the time for our next scheduled meeting to Budget and Finance so that we can get the budget done. So our next meeting will be in December.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols?
if I could just remind Ms. Underwood that Christmas falls on Sunday. The city is closed on the 26th. I'm not sure that's the day that we will observe.
Okay.
So the city will be closed. I'm not sure if you want to reschedule or cancel your December 26th meeting.
Okay.
Next up, Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last meeting that we had was in October of 2022 on our regularly scheduled day. Our next meeting would have been on November 29th. However, we are yielding our time to Budget and Finance in an effort to get the budget done without having to meet on additional days. So our next meeting will be in December at some point, maybe not on the 26th, but we'll figure that out.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is ad hoc reports. Are there any ad hoc reports tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to the administrative reports. Good evening, Madam Mayor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple things. The Christmas tree lighting is this Saturday at 6 p.m. at Perkins. I understand the lights are already going up. And this year, additionally, I'm sorry, Ms. Zorb, Ms. Dukestein, I do not remember what you call the treat that you're putting on the tree because I never did it. So for the birds, what are those called again?
Pine cones?
That's all? Just, I thought it had some sunflowers or something that you were adding to
Pine
it.
cones with peanut butter and then
Okay.
birdseed.
Those will be extra added this year, probably not before Saturday, but
Probably
those are going up as well. I did speak with Mr. Spangler concerning the government day, and he said April 3rd would work for him. Again, we're having the Christmas party on the 16th of December, and I think originally we said an earlier time, but I believe it's going to be like a 7 to 11, and it'll be at the Proctor Center. We'll get more information out to you. And I would just like to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Any questions for the mayor? Okay, next up is the city administrator's report. Mr. Mosby?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I'd just like to echo the mayor's comments. I hope that everyone has a safe and wonderful and memorable Thanksgiving. This is a shortened week, and so because of that, the administrative offices observe the day after Thanksgiving as a holiday, so the last day of the week for this week will be on Wednesday.
Thank you, Mr. Mosby. Any questions for the city administrator?
Mr. President.
Ms. Zorb?
Mr. Mosby, I just have a kind of a follow-up question. I haven't heard an update about the transfer from, what is it, CMI to UAN lately. I just want to know how we're doing on that crossover, and will the city and all the department heads be ready for that come January 1?
Mr. President.
Mr. Mosby?
So the training is being set up, and it'll be sometime in December. I don't know the month, but it'll be an online training So they will be ready for that. But regardless, we're still going to carry CMI one more year so we can make sure that we have everything mirrored and we don't lose any records.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Moving on. Next is the Law Director's report. Mr. Dieters is out of town this week, so he is not with us. And then the Finance Director's report, and she is not here this evening either. So that'll take us to call of members, starting with Ms. Dukestein.
Thank you. I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. It's a very joyful season to be thankful for. I am especially thankful to buy groceries this year because they're very expensive. And I wanted to just remind members of council to take your sunshine laws training. We have to get it done. The rule is you have to have it once per your term. So just a friendly reminder, there's only one more session. You can do it if you register in general, but you have to do that before the last session, or else you will have to attend in person. So just a friendly reminder. That is it.
Thank you, Ms. Dukestein. Ms. DeWald.
I have nothing.
Thank you, Ms. DeWald. Ms. Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say that I am very thankful for every member of council and for the mayor and the city manager. I'm thankful for the spirited debates. Thankful for Mr. President, who keeps us in line just in this season when we need to be thankful. We don't always agree, but I am thankful that you all keep me sharp and on my toes, and I've had to do some research into areas of the law that I ordinarily just would not even touch. So I am thankful to all of you for that. And I would just like to say to everyone, have a happy Thanksgiving. And even if it's something small, that you're thankful for, just remember that because it could be worse. There are people who are stuck in a jail cell. They are not going to get out, like in the foreseeable future, like decades even. So, if nothing else, we can be thankful for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood. Ms. Alexander.
I would like to piggyback on that. Remember the reason for the season. Always try to help someone. You may not be able to do anything big, but every little thing helps. Be thankful for just being on this side of the dirt, for waking up. I'm thankful for council. I'm the newest member, and I'm thankful for the welcoming that I've received. I'm learning as I go, and it's been very enriching. But be thankful for friends, family, and try to forgive. A lot of things aren't so bad that you can't forgive because you don't know, what that plight that person is going through. And we're here to help one another. And happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Ms. Zorb.
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Blythe.
Not much at this time, but this is the season for being thankful, and I feel the same way as Ms. Dukestein. Every time I go to the grocery store, I'm just thankful that I can afford to put food in my house because it's really scary when you go out and you have to do shopping. So I'm truly thankful, and God bless everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Blythe. Ms. Anderson.
I'm very grateful to be off work today, and I got to drive past our Christmas tree, and I saw Braden and our Public Works crew putting up our lights, and I got all happy inside because I was excited to see that. And so I'm thankful for all of our employees in North College Hill, and especially our Public Works team, which I know is coming up on their busy season with snow coming, and it's supposed to be a snowy winter, so hopefully it's not too rough for them. But I wanted to thank them for how wonderful our lights look, and I love our street lights and the candles, and it's also beautiful, and I love North Collegehill in the winter, so hopefully they don't have too rough of a winter coming ahead of them, but that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Next up is remarks from the audience. Ms. Nichols, can you help me with the sheet there? How many do we have signed in tonight?
We just have two.
2? All right. Who's first?
Lois.
Please state your name and address, and then it's all yours.
Okay, my name's Lois Heisel. I live at 7825 Fina Place. I know you're getting tired of looking at my face, okay? Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I don't want to start breaking down crying, but we're supposed to have more seniors down here, but some seniors don't want to come out dark, okay? And I don't blame them for that, but it's hard to tell the seniors that the seniors is not going to open. So whatever you can do, guys, please, please, I'm begging you. The seniors needs that place open so they can get in there and do stuff. Because, you got some seniors who stay home, do nothing, okay? North Collegehill, I'm sorry. Please vote it yes. Please vote it yes. Bring the people back. You don't realize how many people's calling me. I said, I can't do anything. All I can do is speak. So please pass it, please. I thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Lois.
you.
Then we have Ms. Campbell.
Yes, ma'am. You're fine. Take your time.
I just want to reinforce what Lois said about this senior center. We need, I was by a car running from police. It's been almost 30 years ago, and that's a little thing that I have. I lost my job. I lost everything. I lost my memory. I lost habit. I'd only been married 1 year, and but luckily I didn't lose my husband. But that's one thing that I have. I just love that. And please consider that. And if there's anything that we can do, we'd be more than willing to do what we can. Thank you for your considerations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm so
You're,
slow.
No,
you're
no,
fine.
no,
Do
take
not-
your time.
Yes, don't worry about it.
Take your time.
Sorry, what is your name? Debbie Campbell, I'm sorry. I state that. Like I said, I had a brain injury, I don't remember stuff, so. Sorry,
All right. Thank you, folks. Next on the agenda then is legislation. And first up, we have a second reading for resolution number 18-2022, a resolution to approve a credit card policy for city employees. Okay. Next item of legislation is a first reading for resolution number 19-2022. This is a resolution to approve the purchase of certain real estate.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I have a question with regard to Resolution 19-2022.
Ms. Underwood, can you put on your mic?
I apologize, I knew that.
You're good.
I have a question about this particular resolution. So at the bottom of it, it says passed on this 7th day of November 2022. And unless we're in a time machine, that's
That's a good point.
so I just wanted to kind of point that out. And that's kind of
Actually,
That
it's-
was my question, so I do have something else if nobody else has a question.
It's written 4 times in there.
Yes, it does say it on there 4 different times.
Yeah.
It actually has the day in there.
So, yeah, we should probably fix that.
Okay.
And, Mr. President, I move that we suspend the second and third reading of Resolution 19-2022.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I would like to second that motion, but I'd also have a point of order.
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Do we amend that before or after we suspend the readings?
I think we suspend the readings, then we need to amend it,
Okay,
I believe.
okay.
Okay. What's that? We change it before we suspend the readings? Okay.
Okay, well, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to be considered before my prior motion.
Okay.
I move to amend Resolution 19-2022 to replace, each time it makes a reference to November 7th of 2022.
Okay, and that is 4 different times. And you're replacing it with the 21st?
Yes.
Mr. President,
Mr. President.
I'm sorry,
Ms. Nichols?
I would just remove the date in case it does not.
Okay, that's a good idea.
That's,
Yep, good,
that's
good.
what I
All right.
voted out, yeah.
So remove, let's change that. You okay with that?
Yes, so
Yes, that absolutely makes sense. Thank you.
I move to remove every reference to
Okay,
November 7th,
and that is in 4 places.
2022.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I second that amendment.
Okay. So the motion to amend Resolution 19-2022 by removing the 7th 4 different times out of the document was made by Ms. Underwood, seconded by Ms. DeWald. Any other discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
this puts us into that little nitpicky stuff that I think drives us all crazy sometimes. So we had a policy set that if there were changes on a resolution or ordinance, it would just be a strike-through, and then the correction would be put following that. So with this, we can just leave it as a strike-through, or do we remove it absolutely completely?
Mr.
Because it
President,
hasn't passed yet as a,
Mr. President.
Correct. Mr. Mosby?
Yes, so the interpretation of that that Mr. Wald is referring to is if it would make a material difference. In this case, the difference is not a material difference other than you're just omitting, so a strike-through would be sufficient.
Thank you. All right, so motion to amend Resolution 19-2022 by Ms. Underwood and seconded by Ms. DeWald. I'll call the roll. Ms. Dukestein?
Yes.
Ms. DeWald?
yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. I will turn it back over to you. You want to restate your previous?
Yes,
Motion.
thank you. Mr. President, I move to suspend the second and third reading for Resolution 19-2022
Okay,
as
thank
amended.
you. Ms. Zorb, do you still second that?
I do.
All right, motion to suspend second and third readings on Resolution 19-2022 by Ms. Underwood, second by Ms. Zorb. Any other discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein?
Yes.
Ms. DeWald?
Yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes,
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President,
Go for it.
Ms. Zorb?
I make a motion, we adopt Resolution 19-2022 as amended.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. Underwood, to adopt Resolution 19-2022. Any discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein?
Yes.
Ms. DeWald?
Yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes,
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
And that motion passes 7-0. We're halfway there.
Okay, so Mr. President, Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
At the risk of, well, you know what, I can wait for new business. Let's keep it moving.
Okay. All right. Next item of legislation is a first reading for resolution number 20-2022, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Mr. Mosby, what's the date that's due?
Yes, sir,
October
Mr. President,
1st.
thank you. This, actually, this particular legislation was due to the county on October the 26th.
Mr. President.
I had Ms. Anderson first.
Okay.
I'll move to suspend the second and third reading of Resolution 2022.
I have a question.
All right, so I have a motion to suspend second and third readings, Resolution 20-2022 by Ms. Anderson. And I have a question, so I'll open it up to discussion. Ms. Underwood?
So if you look at, I'm sorry, let me get there. It makes a reference to 5705.34 of the Ohio Revised Code. And if you read that section of the Ohio Revised Code, it states, each taxing authority by ordinance or resolution shall authorize the necessary tax levies and certify them to the county auditor before the first day of October in each year. So, or at such later date as is approved by the tax commissioner. So, my question is, has the later date been approved by the tax commissioner, number one? Number two, is the date that we're submitting this for October of 2022 or October of 2023?
Mr. President?
Mr. Mosby?
Okay, thank you. So if I could work backwards, these, we would be accepting the amounts and rates for taxes payable in 2023. So, which means that these would be for the tax bills for the residents for 2023. For your first question, the date which we received was from not, of course, our tax commissioner. We don't have a tax commissioner per se, but we did get that date from the auditor's office.
Okay.
Hamilton County Auditor, I'm sorry.
Well, Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Underwood.
I'll second Ms. Anderson's motion.
All right, I have a motion to suspend second and third readings for Resolution 20-2022 by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Underwood. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
who drafted this resolution?
The resolution is basically a template resolution that came directly from the county.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
so my question is, who drafted this resolution?
The county drafted the resolution.
Okay, so someone from the county typed this up and presented it to us on our agenda today?
Someone typed it up, yes, from the county gave us the form.
Okay.
The only thing we added were the numbers, and that is what we submitted, is basically identical to last year's.
Is that the royal we, or is there a person who typed this, prepared it?
I mean, I can't tell you that. I mean, we have a point of contact at the county auditor's office that we deal with, and she is the one who sent it to us.
Okay.
All right, motion to suspend second and third readings for Resolution 20-2022 by Ms. Anderson, second by Ms. Underwood. I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein?
Yes.
Ms. DeWald?
Yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes.
Ms. Alexander?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Underwood to adopt Resolution 20-2022. Any discussion? I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein,
Yes.
Ms. DeWald,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. All right, last item of legislation is third reading for ordinance number 11-2022, an ordinance making additional appropriations.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb,
I will move that we adopt ordinance 11, 2022.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald,
I'll second that.
motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald to adopt ordinance 11-2022. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Blythe?
did we receive paperwork on this earlier?
2 meetings ago?
Okay, okay, thank you.
All right, I will call the roll. Ms. Dukestein,
Yes.
Ms. DeWald,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That is all for legislation. Next up is further remarks from the audience as it pertains to legislation.
I want to thank you for passing it. Did you pass it?
Yes,
did.
we passed it.
Yes.
So the further remark from the audience is Miss Lois thanking us for passing the resolution number 19 and the whole gang back there.
I would do the flip, but I'm afraid I'm not
Please, no flips.
Thank you. You're wonderful.
I can go home and call the girls, huh?
Please do.
Thank you.
I'm doing it.
I see it, I
Good
see it.
girl.
I mean, I'm playing cheer volleyball, you know?
We've got several things that we have to do. But we will do that.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for
Bye.
coming
Happy
and
Thanksgiving.
thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Goodbye, good folks.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Warms my heart.
I was gonna say, they're a lively bunch.
Start coming and playing chair volleyball.
They think it's open the
You got long arms, you can
I bet they do. I just, well,
you get t-shirts and everything, babe.
I don't want it to be false expectations.
So I'm
That's where
proposing
I
that
am.
city council forms our own chair volleyball team and we take them on. I'm ready to dominate.
Oh, that might be a good fundraiser, Mr. President.
It might be.
Need some practices in.
Celebrity volleyball.
rules.
Right.
I'm glad Ms.
Fell out the
Alexander.
chair, everything.
You know what? I'm glad Ms. Alexander is using wisdom. She says she needs some practice. They will whip you out behind.
Can't even imagine.
That's what I just said, too. I was like,
I'm scared.
All right, well, let's get back on track here, and next up is old business.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I have a piece of legislation that I've asked a couple council members. It doesn't look familiar to them, or I don't remember making notes on this, but it says, Mr. Mosby, you'll probably be able to help me with this more than anybody, amending the sections of some of the codified ordinances related to lot development standards and dwellings of any lot.
So that was presented to council, and because it is dealing with planning commission and a zone change, we had to have a public hearing. We had a public hearing scheduled prior to the meeting on the 7th, but that public hearing was not held. So I actually Mr. Graver, I believe that you received an email from me earlier today. I know he's busy.
I have not seen that,
Oh,
sir,
okay.
if I
So
have.
there was an email that was sent saying that we have to reschedule the public hearing because we have to have a public hearing first before, actually, I apologize. The public hearing needs to be 30 days before the third reading of the legislation. However, the announcement for the public hearing has to be made 30 days before the public hearing itself can be held. So that basically means 2 months out.
Okay, so I'm correct that I don't have any notes on this? We
Yes.
really haven't done anything with it yet?
Yeah, so a little bit of history, though. I appreciate you asking. This was a piece of legislation that was actually done several years ago. However, it, for whatever reason, it never made it to council. So that is why. So planning had already recommended it for passage, but for whatever reason, it never got to council floor.
So, and then on this same note, and the reason I'm curious is because it says ordinance number and it's got space -17. So it was probably 17 of some year that I
Correct.
don't remember.
Yes, ma'am.
But also, it says ordinance, but it says a resolution amending. So,
It probably should be an ordinance, actually.
yeah,
It
so
should
the
be.
verbiage in there might need to be looked at
Okay.
on that first.
Thank you for pointing that out. So what is also important about that legislation too, if I may indulge the members of council for just a moment, that is not, I want to be clear that that's not a citywide change. Basically, that change occurs in the southeast quadrant, basically around the streets where the area where we have Oak Knoll, Corcoran, and Bay.
Baybro,
Well, no.
Baywood.
Baywood, thank you very much. Couldn't get it out of my mouth. But it's in that area. So basically, as you all probably know, those homes are and lot sizes are larger. And so that was the reason for the recommendation for the zone change.
Thank you.
Any other old business?
Yes, Mr.
Ms. Underwood?
Mr. President. So, Mr. Mosby, I know you're probably tired of hearing this, but where is our street sweeper?
Where is our street sweeper?
Mm-hmm.
It's on our property right now. I don't.
Is it parked behind the building right now?
I believe it should be.
Okay. And by any chance, do you have a schedule or something?
I was asked for a report that we are putting together by
Okay.
a council member, so yes, I will have that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other old business?
While we're on that street sweeper, 'cause we all love to say that word, I was actually having a discussion with another council member, and we were thinking, could that be used for leaf pickup? You know how some communities, you think we could look into that? Because now most of the leaves are gone, it shouldn't be too big of a task.
I would
I mean-
say that typically when you're doing the leaf pickup, there is an attachment, and I don't believe I can confirm this, but I did not think that we purchased the attachment, the leaf attachment for that. However, since you did bring up leaf pickup, I would like to share some good news. So last year, when we did our leaf pickup, from the 3 pickups that we did, we collected a total of approximately 9 tons of yard waste. This year, after just our first pickup, we've already picked up 12 tons.
Wow, that's good.
So.
My little yard alone was 13 bags, and we still have more to put
So,
out, so, yeah.
and so the reason I say that is because we have been working, I believe, very well with Rumpke. So we would like to continue that. And I do want to also tell everyone that the reason that is so important for us is because that also helps us with our diversion rate in terms of our recycling. So, so all that to say, I think it would be helpful if we just allowed, Rumpke to pick up the bags
Sure.
that people have.
Thank you.
But yes, but I think the other question, I apologize, for the streets, that would be very appropriate, yes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols?
I just had a general question. For the schedule that the council was requesting, what's our particular, what are we looking for? Are we looking for dates, times, where it's used, how much it's used?
Actually, I asked all those questions, where it's been used, what days was it used, if I believe Mount Healthy has a contract with us, how often they used it. Just, and I think what kind of gnaws at me too is that we don't have a schedule. I mean, the community would know. I know they don't want to put up signs up anymore, but what if they came up with an idea that said, at the end of every quarter, so March, the last Saturday of the month or whatever, I'm just making things up now, they would go around and clean the streets so that you wouldn't have to put signs up. They would already know that this is going to be a street cleaning weekend or week, or however you want to word that. I don't
they
know.
still would have to
There's a
put
lot
the-
more to think about.
They would
on
have to
that.
put the no parking signs up either way. But you're
Okay.
talking about something to get them to get the cars off the street, that however they do it. I just see them, no
Yeah.
parking, whatever, what have you. I just was curious as to, if somebody was, what the reason was or what we were looking for.
Right, it's
Because-
just, so many people ask, if you shop in a community, you're going to get asked questions. And
So I will
that's
say
what
this,
happens.
I'm trying to remember it from signing it. There was the contract with the Mount Healthy was permission to rent to them. I cannot remember if it said a specific time in there. I do not believe that it did. It didn't.
It doesn't.
No.
I mean, it
I just
basically, they
remember
charge
when
it.
I read it, it's just to allow them to use it. It didn't say a specific time. I do know that.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby.
so to clarify a little bit on the no parking signs, of course, Mr. Wald is correct. We were doing that, however, when we were borrowing the street sweeper that we had from Colerain Township. So the reason that we were doing that is because we only had it for a limited period of time, and so when those streets would come up, we would put the no parking signs up so that we could definitely get through the streets. We had not been using the no parking signs as we've been using the street sweeper, because in the event that there are cars that were out there, the street sweeper has gone around, and then because typically what they do is, I'm just trying to make sure I have it correct. I think they do two pass-throughs. So they typically would come around, go up, and then come down. If they would come back on a particular street, they would be able to typically get the, whatever the debris or the dirt is. So that was one of the reasons that we actually had the no parking signs up, because we were renting the street sweeper ourselves. And the mayor is correct. When we loan it out to Mount Healthy, basically we have it on a daily rate, and so they borrow it by the day, and then we charge them by the day.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I mean, by that logic, then if we did like, hey, every last Wednesday of the month, and they all knew that, then we wouldn't really need to put out the no parking signs, because, I mean, by what Mr. Mosby was saying is we're already kind of doing that without putting out the no parking signs. But I think, I mean, for me, I mean, I've asked before too, and I appreciate Ms. Diewald for staying on it, and for Ms. Underwood for staying on it as well. I think it's just about making sure it's all the checks and balances. I mean, I don't think anything nefarious is going on. I don't want anybody to imply that anything nefarious is going on, but it's just nice to know what's being used, how it's being used, how can we utilize it more, especially with the budget coming up. Do we need more money for something in Public Works? Do we need less money? Is there something we could help with? Is there something, we need to back off on? But it's just nice to have questions answered. And I know we've been asking that for, since I've been on council for 2-3 years now. So, I mean, I just don't want anybody in TV land to think that, administration's not doing their job, or that we're, just hounding on a empty door or something. I just want to make sure our intentions are clear. We just want answers to our questions.
Any other old business? Hearing none, we'll move to new business.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
with me not hearing anything for new business. Oh, okay, sorry. You guys took a long time.
I thought you were going to ask a question, I'm sorry. Mr. Got to move fast around here. Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
so we passed this legislation. Sorry, trying to get rid of the cold. I can't quite get rid of it. Son is D-Wall scooting away from me, like,
Is it 6 feet yet? I love sharing, but
I know,
there's a limit.
it was worse, believe it or not. It was way worse. So I'm just wondering when the building will be purchased.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you talking about the senior center? Basically, what you just did was give us permission to accept it. So that will basically be immediately. I will obviously reach out to. Sorry, not obviously. I will reach out to the former executive director so that we can make the exchange. There are technical things that have to be done, but the law director, of course, in the resolution, the law director will draft the title transfer and all that. But that will begin to start. That process will begin tomorrow.
Okay, so about, what are we thinking? I know I'm being annoying. I apologize that I'm being annoying, but I'm going to continue to be annoying until I get a solid answer.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I don't think you're being annoying. What solid answer are you looking for?
So are we talking a month, 6 months, a year,
No,
10
well,
years?
so maybe I misunderstood your question, but I thought you were asking when we would take possession of it. So
Right, that's what I was asking.
Okay, so that process will begin tomorrow. The technical part of it, we just need to get the keys. That is just something I can work with the former executive director on. The more legal parts of it are the parts that Mr. Dieters will be taking care of. So I wouldn't think that would take more than, I don't know, a week or so.
Okay, and so my follow-up question, with your permission,
Go ahead.
is that with regard to the money that was like the senior citizen levy,
Yes.
and I know that went to the former nonprofit that ran the senior center.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering if they've exhausted the funds for 2022, number one, and or kind of, if you can just give us kind of just an overview of how that works.
Okay, so I appreciate that question. I do think it is important. So just as background, and not just for council, but also for those who are listening, when we receive those funds, which we receive twice a year, we simply act as an agent, or in the past, that's what we've done. I apologize. So we would get approximately $24,000 in April, and then we would receive another roughly $25,000 in August. Every time we would receive it, we would simply turn around and give it to the nonprofit organization, meaning that at that point, the government, the city, has nothing to do with those funds. That will no longer occur because there's no nonprofit, which means that the funds will stay with the city, and that means that at least right now, the city will have to manage those funds. I cannot speak for how the previous funds were managed, but I can tell you that we did give the last disbursement to the nonprofit organization in August.
Okay. And is there any, do they have any funds remaining, or?
I do not know, but it is something that now that we've done this part that I will definitely inquire about.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb?
so I'm going to continue on that same order of business. And Mr. Mosby, would you have any type of speculation as to how soon it would be open for the citizens that were here tonight? Because they're pretty excited, but I have a feeling they might have a false impression of what this meant. It doesn't mean that it's opening for them tomorrow.
That is
So
correct.
I don't want them to have that impression. I want to set the proper expectation. So do you have any type of estimate?
Well, as we had mentioned, I believe at the last meeting, we're definitely going to first go through, and we're going to do a cleaning and an inspection of the building itself. And then after that, one of the things that the mayor wanted to make sure that we do is to schedule together, and then also to make sure that we have the proper manpower to manage that. So it is within that time frame, which is probably a few weeks to a month. But I would honestly say, if you're asking me for a rough schedule, I would say probably the beginning of 2023.
Mr. President,
Thank you.
Ms. Blythe?
did the nonprofit share with you any information about the person who ran it, the job description, what it detailed, the average salary, and what a normal week was like? I'm just curious as to when you reach out for someone to hire someone again, what was the job title? Salary's not important, but what was the job title and various things that they did for the center? Have they shared that with you, the nonprofit?
Well, the job title was executive director for that, but I will say that my understanding is that, if I may put it this way, jack of all trades, master of none, or chief cook and bottle washer, that basically did everything. So that is something that we're going to have to take into consideration, especially if we're talking about, a salary. Now, obviously, a large part of that is going to be dependent on how that will be managed. Will it be managed, in-house? Will we do something similar, right? Looking for people to serve on a board of a nonprofit or whatever, something like that. But no, I don't have an immediate amount. I will tell you that I don't think that the salary that the former executive director was making truly reflected the amount of work that went into managing and administering the senior center. So I can tell you that.
I was thinking the same thing.
Mr. President.
Okay.
Ms. Dukestein?
So I agree that the seniors that came tonight, and probably, hopefully, those are, as they're listening, getting a more clear picture of when the building would open. Is there, or can we plan to reach out to them to kind of help them with that understanding? Because I felt like the joy was that we received the building, but it was also associative with the fact that they thought that that means an immediate reopening.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols?
the two ladies, Miss Lois and
Ms. Campbell.
Dorothy, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
No, it's
no.
the one that
Oh.
was in the corner. Her name is Dorothy.
Yeah.
They did ask Mr. Mosby as they were leaving, in a nutshell, what does that mean? And he said it's the first process, like we're getting started. I don't want to take your words, but you can tell him exactly what you told him, because they did ask him. And he did give an answer to let them know that it's not immediate, it's not right away. So I don't want to.
No, yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, that's a very big, very good summary. I think hopefully council is confident that we would not just take the building and then just open it up. We're still going to do our due diligence. I'm still going to have Public Works walk through there. I think I mentioned to council before that there were some minor repairs that I know that our staff can do, that they would do. And then as far as our plan is concerned, I had mentioned some things to the mayor, so I don't want to presume that any of those would be accepted, but I will simply say that she and I will absolutely talk about what that process will be, and then obviously that will be conveyed back to council. So,
Mr. President.
Ms. Underwood?
So, of course, I have a follow-up question based on all the other questions. Is the senior levy going to be sufficient to run the senior center effectively? And if not, which I'm kind of guessing it's probably not, what does that mean for our levy? Like, what do we need to do?
I'm smiling. I would say that I think that your question is very apropos, especially where we are now. So the reason I say that is because that levy is scheduled to be renewed in 2023. I think at the time, we were simply going to just recommend putting it on for a renewal. I'm not saying anything other than that at this particular point, but I do believe that Ms. Underwood's question is one that if we do a market study and find that, that perhaps, especially some of the administrative expenses may be higher, then it might require something else. Now, having said that, because I don't want anybody to just hear that that was what we're going to do, I also want to stress that I am also aware that the seniors were paying dues in order to be part of that. Now, I don't know the exact amount, and I do not know what the revenue was. So when I talk to the former executive director, I'm going to be able to get those records to kind of see what the cash flow was that was coming in, not including, so be clear, not including the rentals, because the rentals, I believe, are separate.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
can't let it go. So we found out tonight with speaking with some of our seniors here that some things were liquidated already. One big important item was the bingo calling system. So I'm guessing that means the microphone, the table, all the little bingo balls. I'm guessing the bingo cards. So I don't know how stripped down that building is going to be. If the table and chairs are still there, so yay, we can still do chair volleyball. But I don't know, we'll have to look at that and kind of get
Right.
a punch list going to see.
No, that's absolutely correct. That's why I said that. The first thing we need to do is get in to look at that. To your point, once again, to be clear, the nonprofit organization dissolved. It is no longer in existence, and by law, they must divulge.
Yeah.
Divest themselves of the assets, and then they have to give them to typically either a nonprofit organization, or in this case, they gave it to the government. So I was not told that one had been given away, but once we get in there, we'll be able to find out, exactly what we had and what is still
Mr.
there and what
President.
isn't.
It was just
Mr.
chatter
President?
with them tonight, so.
Yes.
Because they wanted to know what happened to it. And it's like, oh.
But, again, I just think we ought to wait until we're able to get in there, because, well, we all know that North College Hill is a huge city, and there's no gossip that ever goes on here.
Never.
Never, right? I'm being sarcastic for everyone who's listening.
Mr. President.
Ms. Blythe?
So legally, because we are going to purchase the building, there's no way for our intent to reopen it. There's no way to slow down the liquidation. There's no way that they can. I mean, I understand that they have to liquidate, but if we're taking it on, it seems there's no legal way to stop the physical liquidation, just like you said, the bingo board, the chairs, the table, because we're taking it on for the same purpose. Or would they get in trouble if they leave things in the building? I'm trying to understand that concept.
No, I don't think they would get in trouble leaving things in the building at all, but I do want to be very clear that the legislation only asked basically that we receive the building itself. So I cannot speak to all of the assets that are inside, which is why Mrs. DeWald's comment was very accurate. And that's why I said earlier, the first thing we have to do is get in and make an assessment, because I just don't know what is in there at this particular point in time. I will also remind people as well, though, that the building had been used for, of course, more than just the senior center. There were many families who used it for community events, and I think one very important thing that was happening there was it was also being used as a polling location for Election Day. And I think that alone would be important enough for us to make sure that we maintain that portion of it as well.
Mr. President.
Ms. Underwood?
This is my last question today. So, the income from like the event rentals and that kind of thing, is that income then used to kind of sustain the senior center, or how would that money, or how would that income be used? if-
Yes,
if
no,
we
I,
were
I,
to-
I mean, that is how I would recommend that it would be used. In other words, we charge enough to make sure that we're able to maintain the building, to make sure that there is a deposit that is made so that if whatever group or people use it, if they don't clean up, we keep the deposit. Because obviously we want to maintain that building for as long as we possibly can.
Okay.
I would not, having said that, again, let me just be clear, I'm not suggesting that money be used for the operation of some of the senior services. That would be used for the maintenance of the building.
Okay.
Last call for new business.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson.
I move that we adjourn.
Mr. President.
Ms. DeWald.
I second that.
Motion by Ms. Anderson. Second by Ms. DeWald. To adjourn. Discussion. I'll call the roll. Ms. Dukestein.
Yes.
Ms. DeWald.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Zorb.
Yes.
Ms. Blythe.
Yes.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
That motion passes 7-0. We are adjourned.
Anyhow.